it's Natalia and welcome back to another video. Today I have a highly requested tutorial, potentially the most highly requested tutorial so far, and it is for Taylor Swift's Lover era heart dress. This one has been so fun to recreate, and I think it's so funny how many people want this dress because it's from the Me music video, which is arguably one of her least liked songs amongst the fandom, so I just think it's really funny. But it's such a cute dress. I'm so excited about it. The pattern is available for you as well. I'll have a link to it down below, and obviously this is the tutorial for it so you can follow along. And if you do decide to make this, I would love to see it, so please do tag me if you end up making it because I'd love to see your recreations. Without further ado, let's get into it. Alright, let's start off with our fabrics. We're going to need red sequins, our lining, pink sequins, organza, and your trim, which you can kind of choose whatever. You're going to go ahead and cut out all of your pieces. The red sequin you really don't need a lot of because you're just going to be cutting out this heart. The pink sequins, I think you'll need about a yard of it for everything. I also recommend cutting with scissors when you're cutting the sequins because it's a lot easier. The organza, also just about a yard of it so you can get the entire sleeve. And then the lining, also about a yard, maybe a yard and a half, depending on the width of it. But yeah, these are all of the pieces. You're gonna end up with, I believe, 18 pieces total by the end of it. Make sure to cut out all of the like cuffs, neckline pieces as well because I almost forgot those. And beware that you will be left with so many sequins everywhere, so you will be needing to vacuum consistently. Anyway, I went ahead and finished all of the edges of my lining just because it was a very like fray-y kind of fabric, so I wanted to make sure that it wasn't just fraying on me at all times. So I finished off all of the edges of just the lining. Obviously the sequins do not need to be finished off because that fabric just does not fray, which is really nice, so it's just the lining. Also, this is optional, but I just prefer it because it looks a lot cleaner. Anyway, we're going to now put the heart onto the front of our front piece. So I just went ahead and lined it up kind of where I wanted it. You can kind of play around with the placement if you want, but I went ahead and pinned it pretty heavily so then I could baste all around it. The first time I did this, didn't pin that heavily and it shifted around a lot, so you want to make sure you really have it pinned down so it doesn't move at all and it stays even. You can wait to put the trim on after you have the side seams ready because I realized it kind of got a little bit in the way of that, but if not, you can also do it now. You just have to be wary about, when you do the side seams, but you just want to line it up all the way around. You can use whatever trim you want. I thought that the gold looked cute. I've seen people do like white little puffy balls, which I think are cute too. You can do whatever and then just sew all the way around. I think a zigzag stitch would work really well for this, but I was using my Juki that doesn't have a zigzag like thing, so I just went with a straight stitch and it worked just fine. But if you do have a zigzag, I think that would work really well here. You should be left with something like this. It is so cute already. Now we're going to put the backs to the front. So I went ahead and clipped it in place because I find these are a lot easier to use than pins when it comes to sequins. And as you can see on that like little side seam, it was kind of getting in the way with the trim. So that's where I, was mentioning that maybe the trim could go on afterwards. But now we're going to go ahead and sew the shoulder seams and the side seams all the way down, obviously keeping the center back open because that is where we're going to be putting our zipper, so you do not want to close that up. Everything else can be closed up though. Moving on to the lining, you're going to want to put the side fronts to the center fronts and get that sewn down, and then the side fronts to the back sides, and then the back sides to the center back. So basically put it all together, obviously. So all the way around, leave the center back open, do close the shoulder seams, and get that all prepped. If you did serge these pieces and you cut off like a little 1/8 of an inch off of it, make sure you sew at 3/8 of an inch and not a full half. Then of course we want this to look really nice, so we're going to press open all of our seams of our lining, make sure everything is nice and smooth. Now we're going to be putting wrong sides together here. We're going to be sandwiching these fabrics together to pretend it's like one fabric. So wrong sides together. And I'm just going to baste around the neckline and the armholes to kind of secure those together. You can just do this at like a good 1/4 inch, nothing crazy. And I use a basting stitch so that I could easily take it off afterwards. Now we're gonna move on to the neck piece. So I'm gonna be putting together the lining to the sequins of it, clipping that in place and just sewing down on one of the longer sides of it. Then I'm gonna open it up and move that seam towards the lining, and we're going to be understitching this in place so that it turns around easier. Now we're gonna put the neck piece on the neckline. So you're just gonna wanna find the center of that neck piece and the center of the neckline and line it up, and then everything else you can kind of adjust accordingly. I'm gonna clip that into place, and then I'm going to sew along that entire edge. I'm gonna go ahead and create a gathering stitch between the notches of the sleeves. Then we're gonna create French seams to close off the sleeves. Since it's organza, we want it to look nice and clean. So organza doesn't really have a right or wrong side, so you can just sandwich it closed however you want. I'm gonna sew at 1/4 inch, then we're gonna trim that to 1/8 inch, flip them over and fold nicely on that seam, and sew that at 1/4 inch, and then that creates your full seam, if that makes sense. Now moving on to our cuffs, I'm going to take all 4 of our pieces, our lining and our actual fabric, and I'm going to fold them all in half, and we're going to sew them all shut. Once you have all of those pieces, you're going to also cut out some trim that matches the length of that cuff, and you're going to want to put it on the right side of the sequin fabric. Kind of like this. It's easier to just watch me do it. Kind of hard to explain. But anyway, you're going to essentially be sandwiching in that trim between the lining and the actual fabric that are both right sides together. You want to make sure the trim is like facing inward so that when you do flip it out, it's facing the right way. Basically just sandwiching it in there, and you're going to sew all the way around that. The cuffs are always really hard to sew just because it's such a small space and you really have to go slowly, move things around, make sure you're not getting anything caught. So just, proceed with caution, do it slowly. If you need to do it a couple times, that's okay. It does take a hot minute. I then went ahead and understitched that. So I did the same thing that we did with the neckline, where I moved the seam towards the lining and then just understitched that in place so that it would turn better. This just creates a cleaner finish, and again, it just makes it turn better, fold over better. I'm gonna gather the hem of the sleeves and make sure that it fits the cuffs. You're gonna wanna put the cuffs onto it right sides together, clip that in place, make sure the seams match on the sleeves and the cuffs. You're gonna do it on both sides, and then we're gonna go ahead and sew that down. This is also one of those that's a little bit tricky to sew, so just, be mindful of it. It's going to take a hot minute, just a very small surface area that we're working with. But anyway, I also went ahead and serged that seam when I was done sewing it so that I could have a clean finish, and then I went ahead and understitched the seam allowance down so that you couldn't see it on the organza. So I understitched it to the cuff so that, again, it doesn't like flip up and it's a little bit of a cleaner finish. So once you're done, this is what it looks like. It's a very clean finish. As you can see, it looks very nice. And now we're going to gather the top of the sleeve so that it fits around the armholes. These are a little bit of like a puffy sleeve, so it does have quite a bit of a gather right there. You're gonna wanna go ahead and match all of the side seams and just kind of move around the gather so that it fits however you want it to. Make sure all the puffiness is towards the top, and then we're gonna go ahead and sew all the way around. I also went ahead and serged that seam when I was done so that it would be a nice clean finish. And then I also understitched that towards like the body of the dress so that, again, that seam would not be visible on the organza sleeves. Now we are almost done. We're going to be putting in that zipper. I chose an invisible zipper. You can kind of do whatever, but I just think this looks the cleanest. I'm going to pin one side and sew that all down, and then I'll do the other side afterwards, making sure that the seam of the neckline aligns on both sides. Once the zipper was in, I finished off the rest of the seam at that bottom all the way to the hem. And to keep things clean, I also went ahead and serged the seams on both sides of that zipper. You're gonna be left with a tiny bit of a tail at the top of that zipper, so I like to fold that down and then fold that seam over to kind of hide it, and then just hand stitch that in place. I'm gonna pin it right here, and you'll see me hand stitching it in a minute, but I just find that this looks cleaner so you don't have any sort of like weird ends of zippers coming up. As for the hem, I like to treat the sequins and the lining as if it were one fabric. So I sandwich them together, serge them together, make sure obviously they are the right length and the same length that you want it to be. And then I serged them together, like I said, and sewed them down at a 1/4 inch seam. You can kind of do whatever depending on the length that you want it to be, obviously. And here's the finished result. So that is it for today's video. I hope you guys liked it. If you did, give it a thumbs up. Subscribe for more if you're not already subscribed, because there's a lot more things coming your way. And follow me on social so you can get a behind the scenes of everything that I'm working on. And you can also give me feedback on what you would like to see and all the things. I'm pretty active on Instagram and TikTok if you comment on my stuff there. And yeah, that is it for today's video. I hope you guys liked it, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!